conversations. Let's have real conversations.
Get ready to stir it up.
Life events and everything in between. Let's go.
Get ready to stir it up.
No capping. If guests got you covered right up.
Get ready to stir it up. Stir it up.
Come on.
Get ready to stir it up.
Welcome to Stir It Up. Today I've got Dr. Christine Marble-Pierre. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. So I'm Dr. Christine Marble-Pierre. I'm a clinical psychologist. I'm currently the head of counseling, career guidance, and community life at Ghana International School. But I'll be transitioning into full-time private practice at Mission Clinic starting in September.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
That's going to be a new journey, and all the best with that journey.
Thank you. I'm excited.
You should be, as you should. Anyway, so thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me.
It's really good to have these conversations. And in this series, as you know, we are talking about emotions, primary and secondary emotions. And today, Christine and I are going to be talking about loneliness. A rather uncomfortable one.
A heavy one.
A heavy one, yes. So you know that feeling where you're sitting at a chatty dinner table, everyone's talking, everyone's laughing, yet you kind of feel alone and empty. When your home almost feels like cold, because maybe the sounds you used to have in the house are no longer there. Maybe just because you have an empty nest. You lie in the bed, you've got someone right next to you, but the absence of some kind of connection makes you feel like you're just by yourself in that bed. So it's this heavy, uncomfortable emotion called loneliness that you and I are going to spend the next hour or so unpacking, and let's see how we do.
Okay, let's go for it.
Let's go for it. So let's start with the question of the basics. So what's loneliness?
Loneliness it's a sad feeling. It's sadness that is based on feeling disconnected from others. So feeling by yourself, feeling that you don't have any social ties or connections or deep connections, communications with other people. And it's a heavy, sad feeling. It's one of the heaviest feelings that people deal with when it comes to depression and isolation.
Is there a difference between feeling lonely and being alone?
Oh, yes, definitely. Because there are times when we want to be alone.
Right.
In fact, just yesterday, I went into the car. I closed the door. This was in the evening. I'd gotten home, surrounded by my lovely family, and I just needed quiet, just alone.
Go away.
So I went, luckily, I left my phone in the car. So I went back to the car. And as I closed the door, the silence of the car, I just stayed in there for 15 good minutes. So alone is definitely not the same as loneliness. There are times when we want to be alone. In fact, depending on personality, there are personality traits where some people prefer to be alone more than with other people. So it's not the same thing at all.
Do you want to tell us about the difference?
So the difference is, the sadness is one aspect of it, right? So loneliness is a feeling. It's an emotion. It's fundamentally sad and yearning for human connection, yearning for social interaction. Alone could be lonely, or it could be solitude and peace. So the alone is a state, as in it's my single self. and there are no other people around. But in that aloneness, you could feel peace and calmness. In fact, people will retreat to be alone for some time to meditate and self-reflect. Or you could be alone and not want to be alone.
Yeah.
Right? You could be alone, and when you're looking for another person, that's when it goes into the lonely
space.
Yeah, the
Got
lonely
it.
space.
Got it. Let's hang on to that thing where you say, when you're alone and you're looking for another person, that's when you're heading into the lonely space. Are you looking for a particular person, a particular kind of person, or just anybody?
Okay, so with loneliness, you're looking for a connection more so than just another person. And in that connection, it's an acknowledgement, someone who understands you, who will bring some joy, laughter, humor. There's respect, there's mutual respect, there's a sense of trust. That's the ideal state. So you're not just looking for another person. What happens though is when we're lonely, we'll take what we can get, right? So you don't know if it's going to be a meaningful connection until you've had the interactions. So in the beginning, for lonely, you're just kind of looking for potential connections, and that could translate into just looking for somebody, anybody.
Okay. Got it. Yeah. Obviously, there'll be some screening. And then
Hopefully.
Yes. Yeah, okay.
Hopefully there'll be some. There should be.
There should be. I think there will be.
Yeah.
I mean, the fact that I'm bored doesn't mean I'll talk to just anybody.
Exactly.
Well,
yeah.
that's my thought, right?
Right.
Okay. The basics will, your values, there will be some basics that will align before you can, or even just how the person looks might even be a beginning.
A factor.
Right? Or where you meet the person or how the person presents themselves. The first 10 seconds will determine whether this is someone I want to connect with or not.
Exactly.
I guess.
Yeah, there are situations where if somebody is truly lonely, they may even go for, like with young people, they'll go for the wrong crowd, right? Because at least it's people, it's a sense of belonging. So it may not be their first choice. And I see this quite often where somebody is feeling isolated.
Yes.
Like you said in the beginning, you're in a crowd, say a school situation or a work situation, and you feel like you're not quite in the crowd. You're not one of them. And so just so that you fit in, you'll do things, you'll say things just to fit in. And it might not be people you would ideally hang out with, but just to stave that feeling of loneliness, you'll find people going for it.
It's amazing the perspective you bring just by saying that, right? Because ordinarily, you would think, oh, I'll never do this. But as you say that, I see it 100%, how, you know, in a particular situation, one would actually behave out of character just because they need a connection or they need someone.
It's a drive.
It's a drive.
Yeah. So in the same way, hunger is a drive. You feel hungry and it's like, I need food. Oh, thirsty, I need water. At a higher level, this is Maslow's hierarchy of needs. At a higher level, there's a drive to fit in, to belong, to be one of a society or a community. And that drive, like the word sounds, will push you to do things. Yeah.
So there are people who are described as loners, right? And this could be their temperament, it could be their personality, it could be their character, whatever it is, right? Would you then describe those people as being lonely?
Or
the loners,
in some cases, they can get lonely.
Okay.
But we cannot assume
Yes.
that they're lonely.
Right.
I mean, there are people who just leave me alone.
I need space.
I need space.
I want to
very
read a book.
They're
Yes.
very happy being alone.
Yeah.
They feel, for some of them, it's overstimulation. You know, the noise, the plenty talking, is too much. It's work for them. And they say for introverts versus extroverts. Introverts are those who, fine, I'll socialize, but I have to retreat and
To regroup,
recharge. So when they're alone, they're not lonely and they're not looking for.
Yeah.
And then there's a bit of a spectrum where there's some people who the social cues are complicated. You know, you're using sarcasm, you're using humor, you've raised one eyebrow. What does it mean? They're not understanding all
much.
these. It's work. So they're very fine being alone. And they'll happily work with their computers or gadgets. And people
There are no cues there.
There are no cues. It's straightforward.
It's ones and zeros.
So there are loners who like to be alone and they feel better when they're alone. There are some loners who they enjoy being alone, but because we all still have at some base some need for social connection, they find that they start to feel lonely. Even though they would prefer to be alone. They'd rather not be alone 100%. But because of their natural go-to, they've lost friends. They haven't built the circles or the community. So they get to a point where they start to feel alone, especially in adulthood. Because in adulthood, you have to be very deliberate when it comes to friendships. It's not like when you're in school and your friends all come to the same place at one time. As an adult, it's let me invite this person out for drinks so that we catch up. So as they get into adulthood, they find that it's too isolating. They're not getting the little tidbits
That they need.
that they need. Yeah.
What causes loneliness? What makes one lonely?
It's a desire for the connection. So that's one part of it, right? So it's I wish there was somebody who saw me, who gets me, who thinks I'm great to be with. And not having that, you start to feel your self-worth goes down. Even your sense of identity, because in many ways we're mirrors. What other people say we are is a reflection, and that's how we form our own identity. And so when we don't have that, we start to feel lost in who we are, and all of that causes the sadness, the disconnect, the lonely feeling. So it starts with the desire to connect and not having that. And then it builds into a whole cognitive, mental world of why am I not able to connect? Why am I alone? And it compiles it. It makes it.
So the
more.
fundamental thing is a lack of social connection, right? Or not not being able to make that emotional connection. And that could be from maybe not even having the skills to do it.
Yes. So it could be skills.
Could it be significant life changes, right?
Definitely.
If something happened in my life. In your experience, what are some of those significant life changes that come up?
Yeah. So big negative events, what we would call traumatic events.
Okay.
It could be an armed robbery. It could be the loss of a loved one. It could be some form of abuse.
Okay.
People start to, it opens up your world to one that you weren't really aware of before. And then you start to wonder if people understand. You start to feel different.
Right.
Because people, when you look around, people are still happy and hey, Charlie, what's up?
But do
And
they
you're
know what
thinking,
I'm going through?
yeah, you're like, no, the world has changed for me, but you're still going about it the same way. And immediately that creates this distance from others. So one could be negative events. Another could be just a physical change in either location or position. So a lot of leaders are lonely. They say it's lonely at the top. Because again, you're in
I
this
can
place.
tell you stories for days.
Yeah.
Like, go on.
Tell us, or later.
No, I think that you are often faced with a plethora of decisions and information that you're not at liberty to share because you have visibility on so
Yeah.
many things that could create anxiety, panic, and destabilize people.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, wielding all of that, you're often in a position where you have to make decisions, but you have no one to share those
Yeah.
decisions and the journey to making those
With.
decisions with,
Right.
right? And that's lonely. Because if I was to tell you that, okay, our revenue numbers are here, I need to cut cost here, there are policy changes in this direction, the different things that could happen. Somebody who is at the middle level of management or junior staff doesn't know what to do with that information, right? Sometimes a decision is made, because you're in the day-to-day, you probably are not in full alignment with it, but you know that ultimately it serves the business, right? You're struggling with Forex losses, you're struggling with inflation, you're struggling with the fact that this is how the business is performing, but you've not been able to raise salaries for the last, year or two. How do you juggle that?
Yeah.
And you can't go and have that conversation with the teams. Right? You understand. So it's a place where I have actually said that coaching and having a coach as a business leader has to be mandatory across, because you need that place to go to where you can have an open conversation about what you're dealing with and what you're struggling with on a daily basis, because then that becomes a safe space for you.
Exactly. Because the burden, you're bearing it alone.
The burden
you need the
is
support.
heavy. And it becomes even heavier when you're a leader that actually cares. Because, I take a lot of the leaders that I work with and they care, right? Because you know that I remember my boss and I were running a pitch. And he said, do you know what this means? And we worked it out. And he says, X number of people's livelihoods. And he had worked it out to the point where it was the individuals that work for us times the number of families, the average number of families that people have, which is like maybe 6 to 7 people, and the number of dependents. And he says, this is the load I carry. That's the weight.
Yeah.
You know, but you see the person go up and down and you will think that, oof.
Yeah.
But he's probably thinking that 1,000+ people are depending on me.
Right.
And I need to win this.
And then after all that, he has to present a certain confidence.
Yes,
face.
because if you're not sitting upright and you're not looking confident.
Yeah. So leaders struggle with loneliness a lot. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. There's also the other group I'm thinking of is with cultural differences.
Yeah.
But not just culture, even socioeconomic status. So if you have an individual who is placed in a space where there's some intangible understandings that are not clear to them, sense of humor, like idioms that people use. I'm thinking of my first time in university. So I was traveling outside of the country for the first time. I went to university in New York. And I'd stayed in Ghana my whole life. And I hit 18, graduated from secondary school, and it's like, go forth into the world. And you get into a space where it's a different culture. There's the weather, there's the accents, there's people asking you about your identity, and it can start to feel very isolating. I remember there were a lot of group sessions where they would do things like, okay, everyone say your favorite music band and your favorite TV show. And it was just so...
And you had no clue.
No clue.
Yes.
I mean, Johnny just come. I was like, hey, music band, I have to go and think of it. So there's something too about when... I'll use the word culture. When you feel out of place.
Culturally out of place.
In a culture. And sometimes it may even be within your own country.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So maybe you left and came back, or you're just in a community where it's different. Because we know in Ghana, for instance, it's different strata. Yeah. And so that difference can cause loneliness as well, because it breaks the likelihood for connection, for deeper connections, because people are coming from different angles. Yeah.
Got it. Okay. So, what are the associated emotions that come with loneliness? And so we know that you feel alone and you feel sad.
Right.
Beyond that sadness, beyond that feeling like no one cares, if we were to name any other emotion, what would they be?
There's a lack of self-worth.
Okay.
And it's not just sadness. It's like an identity of, am I
worth it?
Am I worth it? Am I taking up space? Do I have a right
Should I
to
be
be
here?
here? Especially since nobody seems to be, or it's their belief that nobody seems to want to connect with me. It starts to affect your self-worth. And that is, in psychology, is much deeper than sadness.
Would that not be like almost depression?
Yeah. So it would go towards depression, because sadness, in the moment, it will last for a while. Something can distract you, something can make you happy. But when you talk about self-worth, it's your core. And so it can lead to depression. It can lead to suicidal ideation, suicidal thoughts, because of you starting to question whether or not you should be around. Yeah.
When I think about what a lonely person looks like, I want us to talk about that and stay on that for a while.
Okay.
What does a lonely person look like?
There's no way to know what
Good.
a lonely
And
person
that's why I say I
looks
want
like.
us to stay on it for a while.
Yeah, I mean, stereotypically, we imagine the mobile, quiet, withdrawn, looking sad.
But that's not what a lonely person looks like. Good.
Especially because when you're looking lonely, you're increasing your chances of making a
Or
connection.
staying lonely.
Well, no, actually, so when you look lonely, it's more likely that somebody will see you and say, oh,
Are you
you're
okay?
looking sad, are you okay? Truly lonely people, oftentimes you cannot tell, because they will mask it, they will go out, they will smile and use that chipper, hi, how is it going? It's all fake.
Yeah.
And they'll go back home, close the door,
And break down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we can never assume with the people around us, the people we work with, we can never assume that we know
What's really going on?
what's really going on. And that's why we need to be very careful with how we treat others. Yeah.
And I want to stay there a bit. And I want to stay there because I think that even if you don't know someone personally who's struggled with loneliness or who's committed suicide, we've all read about someone who we thought was really happy. So Twitch the DJ or Robbie Williams, who was making us laugh,
Yeah.
you know, belly aching laughter. And then one day to the next, he's gone,
They're gone. Yeah.
right? And then the stories come out and say they've battled with depression over time. And we'll say, but how? How could they have been battling with that? They looked happy, they looked perfect. And it's important for me because as we raise teenagers and we raise young adults and we have partners and we have friends and so on, in what ways do we build those authentic relationships to see where the people that matter to us are at in their lives?
Yeah. It's making the space and the time, especially if it's for people that matter to us. We have to make the time. We assume we're making time, but sometimes when we look at our lives, it's just busy, busy, busy. It's back to back. And oh, hello, or we're texting, but there's no real substance to it. So that deliberately creating space and time where it's just to allow the people we care about to be in our presence and around us. And these days it's difficult.
It is.
It's difficult, one, because we're busy, but also because of the screens. So you could be sitting, family time,
And everyone is on the screen.
right? Everybody's on the screen and there's no connection happening. So if your child or your spouse had wanted to bring something up, it never feels like the right moment. And so we have to be so deliberate. And you can put all the cell phones in a basket. Let's
But
play.
all we're thinking about is the basket.
It doesn't matter. Put it away. But you'll find that the conversations then come up, you know, and you can use other mediums, right? Because if you're playing a game, you're playing Uno, Ludo, or Ware, it gives a little bit more interaction space.
True.
And then things can come up. So the space and time is one. And also the message that it's okay to not be okay.
Yeah.
Right? It's okay to be angry. I think we're raised to hide these emotions. It's like, hey, why are you angry? Calm down immediately. And it takes some strength to allow a spouse or a child or a friend to vent and be angry and say, I'm listening. I hear you.
I see you.
I see you. That sounds rough. I'm really sorry that happened to you. For them to learn that, okay, I don't have to be Miss Perfect or Mr. Perfect to be able to show Ikea or Christine what's really happening. Once that message is there, then things will come out when they need to.
So I'll say two things and I'll jump into my next question. So the first one is about the screens. These screens and social media and all of those things have been designed to make our lives easier and for us to connect more. But in that design, a part of me believes that they've actually created more distance between us, right? Because we are on social media and we become keyboard warriors. But when we actually see each other, we really can't have a meaningful conversation anymore. And so that intentional putting the phone in the basket is necessary for us to really connect as people. Because even after that intense conversation on Instagram or on WhatsApp, you still don't feel a connection a lot of the time, right? The second thing I wanted to talk about is you saying making the space and the time. I'm a problem solver, right? So what would often happen with a lot of my friends is if you came to me and you said, oh, I'm struggling with this and that and that and that, I would immediately go to think, oh, what can we do to fix this, right? And very interestingly, I am learning to say, okay, in this moment, what do you need me
What
to
do you
be
need?
for you?
Let's clarify
Let's
first.
clarify
Before
that.
I annoy you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Before I assume what you need from me.
Yeah.
Right. Because sometimes I find that somebody just wants to vent.
Mm-hmm.
They know what they need to do to solve their problem. Right.
Yeah.
Or somebody just needs someone who just validates how they're feeling. Or someone just needs someone to make them. And very recently, a friend of mine says, I just want someone to make me feel like I matter. And those were her exact words. Right. And I liked the specificity of what she asked. Because my instinct, I would have just gone straight to, but you just need to do this and do this and do this.
Very well-meaning.
Very well-meaning and
help.
intention, right?
Yeah.
And so thank you for saying that in terms of in trying to build the right connections with the people around us so we can identify what's happening. Also asking people around us what
would be helpful.
What would be
them.
helpful for them.
Yeah. How can I help?
How can I help?
Yeah. That's become one of my favorite phrases. How can I help?
Okay. Is loneliness the absence of people? Can you be fully surrounded by people yet feel alone?
Yeah.
And why is that?
Sometimes you can feel more lonely with people around because it just highlights what you're missing. You know, sometimes if you're alone in your house, you can try and forget that you don't have the connections. Or like you said, maybe you'll be on WhatsApp, on a group, everybody's chatting, you're chiming in. So it feels as an illusion of connection. But say you go to a reunion or a party or a family event and face to face, you're around people and you realize, I don't have anything to connect me with this person. I don't even know how to start this conversation. They don't know me, I don't know them, or they don't seem to care. Then you feel you can't hide it anymore, right? You can't pretend with your screens and your virtual realities that you're not really lonely. It's right in your face. And so it's very, very possible to feel so lonely in a crowd, and then retreat, right? And usually our response then is flight, with the fight or flight response of what do I do in this situation? With loneliness specifically because it's this uncertainty about how to connect. Usually your response then is to withdraw. And what does that mean? You feel even more lonely and more disconnected. Yeah, so there are many people who feel alone in a crowd, at work, at school, at the dinner table, in the restaurant. They're lonely, but they're not alone, but they're lonely.
Got it.
Yeah.
So let's get into our myths about loneliness. Loneliness is a feeling of being isolated or disconnected from others. Being alone can be a choice and a positive experience for some.
All right. So being alone can be a choice, yes. A positive experience for some, yes. So not a myth. So far, I haven't heard any myths from
So it's myth or truth. It's reality,
truth.
myth, truth.
Yes,
Cool.
truth.
So I'm trying to mix it up. Loneliness only affects elderly people.
Oh, myth. That is so not true.
All right.
Even children can feel lonely.
That was the next one. Sorry. But it's fine. It's
Any
fine.
age. I can give you a story for every age bracket of loneliness.
All right. So maybe sitting on that, let's sit with teenagers being lonely.
Okay.
Because I think that we'll still carry on with the different myths, right? But I'm finding that there are a lot of teenagers who are lonely. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, it's very true, and it's due to a combination of factors. With teenagers, you're growing your identity. You're not yet an adult. but you're not a child anymore. And so you're trying to figure out who you are and where you fit in society. And that journey of figuring it out can be very rocky because all your peers are also trying to figure it out. And some will use not so clean or healthy methods to try and make sure they're popular or they're with the in crowd. And so teenagers are struggling with their own insecurities, their own identity. And then they're battling the social world of everyone around me is also unsure and struggling and trying to find their place, which is causing conflict, is causing, you can't sit with us at the table, or
You're not cool enough.
You're not cool enough. You are trying to find friends that you are cool enough to be with, or by force you have to be
By
popular.
force or by fire.
So some of us adults are very happy that we've passed the teenage stage.
Yeah.
And as they mature, as they start to settle into their own, it settles, especially with guidance. And they start to feel more comfortable with their quirks and their flaws. But before that, there's this idea that everyone should fit into a certain space. And the funny thing is, even when they're trying to be unique, it's still a kind of box. You know, it's like, I remember a few years ago, it was like, oh, I like K-pop. So now it's like, if you like K-pop, you're unique. But then there's a whole bunch of people who now like K-pop or anime or, manga. And you're trying to fit in, you're trying to be unique, but it's all very confusing. And so that's one of the reasons it's harder for teenagers. They're still growing. And then the world around them is also still trying to figure it out. So what they need is an anchor. They need a very stable person or social support system that is not wishy-washy.
Yeah.
That it is clear, I accept you for who you are. I will still tell you what to do for your best interest, but I am here and you are loved no matter what else is going on.
Absolutely. When you think about teenagers and the struggles that they have forming their identity, when do you think it ends?
Does it end? Well, it gets better.
They stop being teenagers at 19. So in that
struggle.
thing, yeah.
When does the struggle end?
Maybe not when does it end.
Okay.
When does it begin to settle? Maybe not when does it end. Because really, I mean, I know adults in their 40s who still don't even know where they're heading or who they are, and they still gossip and they still malign and slander each other. So it probably doesn't end.
So I think with the right support and if they're well adjusted, usually by upper secondary school, so by 15, it starts to settle down. But there's a range. So there are those who will still struggle. They'll still struggle through secondary school. University brings a whole new
plethora of challenges.
So then the struggle re-begins.
Yeah.
If you want to take it from a scientific kind of perspective, where you're looking at the brain and the maturity. It doesn't finish developing
till 23, they say, 25.
So let's give it till 23, right? Because then, all your faculties are there. You can use...
Let's go to the next myth. All right. If you're lonely, it means you don't have friends.
That takes us to the definition of friends. Because you could have friends. And I usually tell young people there's different circles of friends. There's like the inner circle of tried and true, I trust you. And that could be one or two people. Then there's casual friends where I won't tell them everything because I don't truly know how it could go. And then there's just hi-bye friends. And these days you have virtual friends. You'll have people who you've never met
And you probably never will meet.
You probably never will meet, but you feel connected. You play games online. You open up about things because you haven't met them, right? So, can you be lonely
Myth
with friends?
or truth or reality?
Truth. You can be lonely with friends because those friends may not be.
If you're lonely, it means you don't have
Oh,
friends.
if you're lonely, no, because you can have the
So it's a
friends.
myth.
It's a myth.
Cool.
Yes.
Aligned.
It's a myth.
So it's like I'm a scoring master now.
It's a myth.
It's a myth. Yeah, I think so too. People with friends or even relationships can still feel lonely if they feel misunderstood, unsupported, or emotionally disconnected.
Truth.
Okay. Loneliness is a sign of weakness or being needy.
Myth.
Okay. Loneliness is a common human experience and can be a response to various situations, such as moving to a new place, losing a loved one. Truth. You can just get over, simply being around others can cure loneliness.
Myth.
The quality
Hold
of...
on. Pause.
Okay.
You said can.
No.
Simply being around.
Simply being around others will cure loneliness.
Okay,
It was
myth.
definitive.
Okay, then it's a myth.
I'm a decent score master. Score mistress. The quality of social interactions is more important than the quantity. Feeling connected and understood is crucial to overcoming loneliness, not just being physically present with others.
Truth.
True.
Big truth.
Okay. Both extroverts and introverts can experience loneliness.
Truth.
Okay. Loneliness is a negative emotion that should be avoided at all costs.
Negative emotion.
Loneliness is a negative emotion that should be avoided at all costs.
I'll say it's a myth. Can I explain?
Yeah.
I can explain.
You can, absolutely.
There's no emotion.
That's negative.
Yeah, that's negative. And when you avoid an emotion at all costs, you are just running into a different kind of problem. I'm all about face the emotion, acknowledge the emotion, and then work on it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I had a guest, Carol, and she says emotions are like protocols. If you do not acknowledge them, they will worry you till you acknowledge them. You know, like the protocols that you do, right?
Yes. We're big on protocol. Yeah.
You have to acknowledge it and say, no, you don't do all protocols observed. Though. You say, Minister of Anger, you're welcome, sit down.
Let's have a chat.
Yeah. I beg you, don't be angry today.
Very
of
true.
thing. Yeah,
Very,
she says
very
emotions
true.
are like protocols,
Yeah,
right?
you have to acknowledge
fear. Okay, where's your low? Hey, and let's have a conversation kind of thing.
Yeah. So avoiding it is not a good idea.
Dangerous.
It's
Because
dangerous.
it will find a way to come out, right? And it might be coming out in a way that's not healthy by you acting out, by you, deflecting or you, doing all sorts of things that then also create new problems for you. That's how she had explained it.
Yeah. We're a little bit like volcanoes.
Yes.
It has to come out, otherwise it will find a way to explode. Yeah.
Okay. Very few people experience loneliness.
Myth.
Okay. Loneliness is a common experience that many people face at different points in their lives. It's widespread.
Truth.
Okay. If you are lonely, you are not making enough effort to socialize.
Myth.
Okay. All right, so that's good. Having gone through that. I want to talk a bit about this. We've talked about it a bit, but the idea that you can lie in the same bed with someone. it says that you hear about all these couples who say, we lie in the bed together, but I feel nothing for her. I feel nothing for him. I feel alone. I don't feel like we connect. What could be the reasons for that lack of connection and that lack of intimacy and that lack of,
Yeah. Communication.
that's
They're not communicating. And communication isn't always verbal, right? But any communication is like the bridge. When
Okay.
we're talking about a connection, how do I go from me to you
Okay.
and form some kind of alliance or link? And one of the main ways is to communicate your needs, communicate your concerns, or vice versa, allow the person to communicate that to you. And so you can very easily fall into a daily routine. And that's the danger with couples. You get into a routine. Okay, we wake up, get ready, go to work, come back, homework,
rinse,
dinner,
wash, repeat.
sleep, repeat. And there can be no communication happening for months or years. Funny enough, this is a personal story. When I was going to get married, I had an auntie who was giving me advice about, how to handle marital situations. And she said, if you have a problem with your husband, find a jewelry box, open it, and speak all your problems into the jewelry box and then close it. So she was trying to say, don't take all your problems. Me with my two no. I said, but that's how we solve our problems. But to this day, I stand by Remo, like speak it. You can speak it in a way that doesn't lead to conflict. But if you're lying next to your spouse and you're thinking, this is getting boring, communicates that we need some spark. We need to do something to liven it up. Find new experiences together. In couples therapy, one of the first stages is to ask them how they met, to try and remind them of the reasons why they connected in the first place. And so even without going for couples therapy, you can try and remember together what it was in the beginning that sparked, that ignited the spark. And that takes communication and then seeking out experiences to make new memories.
Okay. Are there times when people feel alone, but they are not actually alone? It's in their minds. Because I've been told a few times, like, I've been asked the question where is, you've got a support system, or I've been told that you've got this, or I've been told, I would say I'm tired, and say, are you really tired? You've got that to help you with this, right? Or I would say I want something, says, but you've got this, So bringing that into this situation, other people who feel they're alone, but maybe it's not, they are not alone. It's not actually the case.
And they feel lonely.
Yes, they are not alone. They do have people who care, people who are putting out bits for connection. And if they did need a support system at any point in time, they do have a web of people who they could reach out to. But there's a situation that's making them feel that they're alone.
Yeah, there's definitely...
Could that be a thing?
It happens a lot. So I want to caveat that before explaining that we shouldn't undermine their experience, though.
Absolutely.
In that moment, their reality is loneliness.
Yeah.
But depending on there are these things called thinking traps.
Absolutely.
Right? Where maybe you tend to see things as black and white. Okay. So, we went out afterwards, they didn't call me for 1 week. They don't care, right?
Yeah.
So it's either black or it's white.
Yeah.
And for you now, this equals black or white. It means they don't care.
Yeah.
Where it could be like reality is nuanced. Maybe they
They're
got
busy.
busy. Maybe they lost
their
their
phone.
So much happening, right? So you also didn't reach out because you were already angry.
Because you are thinking, let me you have a bit of a righteous indignation that's saying that,
they didn't even call me to check on me.
Yeah.
So there are people who will fall into thinking traps. So the black and white thinking is one of them. There's this the gloom and doom trap.
Yeah.
Like, woe is me.
Yeah.
Everything is
Bad,
bad and down. I knew it. They didn't even care about me, and this is proof of it. And so you'll find people who feel very lonely, but if they were to get help, professional help, or somebody who they trusted and they would hear that person, and they could take a step back and be willing to acknowledge, maybe not for each of these situations I've concluded on, they would find that they're not actually alone. Yeah.
Because, I mean, and I'm making this analogy because I'm a busybody, right? So I'm always doing this and doing that and doing this and doing that. And then a friend of mine said to me, but do you have to do all of these things, right? And then I step back and I'm thinking, actually, maybe not, right?
Yeah.
So I'm just transposing some of that and thinking to myself, are there situations where you might feel, oh, moko small, Zane?
But actually,
But in actual fact, maybe you've put yourself in a certain box, right? And what you're explaining is absolutely right?
Yeah.
You've put yourself in a certain box, and it's made you. And you're right. You feel alone. The feeling is definitely valid.
Yeah.
But you shouldn't have to feel alone because you do have a support
There are
system. You have
people
people
there.
who love you and care for you.
So that reflection, being able to reflect, is so key to mental health.
Absolutely.
And sometimes you need somebody to reflect with, who will bounce things back and say, are you sure? How about we think about it this way?
So let's talk about life cycles.
Okay.
And life stages and situations that can birth loneliness. Right? And how those things come about, what the challenges inherent in those situations are, what the possible causes are, if there are any, and how we remedy them, right? The very obvious one is pensioners. What happens there? Because, I mean, I've been through it with my dad. And so I have a few different opinions because I've seen my dad and his friends, right? But tell me, in your experience, because you've probably dealt with lots of people, right? Where does the loneliness set in? And what happens on that journey?
Yeah. It's the change in lifestyle, right? We're busy. Our routine, our daily routine just brings us into contact with so many people. And then you retire and you
suddenly,
are home. Nothing to do, really, nowhere to go. There's no natural way to interact with people. Maybe church Sunday, prayer meeting Wednesday, but there's still five other days where you're not getting the social interaction. So that's one aspect of just the structure of your life changes and you're not interacting with people. The other aspect is your purpose. And loneliness is so entrenched with this idea of self-worth, this feeling of self-worth. So when you're no longer waking up every day with a clear purpose, you start to feel that disconnect from the world around you. It starts to feel like, do they need me? Do I bring anything to the table? And then thirdly is you actually have less to talk about now, right? Because in our friendship interactions, you'll notice a lot of it is like, oh, this thing happened at work, or did you hear this? But when you're not in the work world or in life, in social life, you don't have as much to tidbit about.
Yes.
There are those who will make it work, right? There are those who will find. I was joking with my husband the other day because his dad had a party, and it was Wednesday afternoon, and I thought, who's going to come Wednesday afternoon?
They showed up, didn't
Hey!
they? GH for life.
They showed up in full force. And so there's some who find ways because you're with age mates who are also now pensioners, and they'll have their social gatherings, but it is difficult to do. Yeah.
I find that pensioners who've come on, when they come on pension, if a couple haven't learned to be together, that can be a challenge.
Yeah.
If they also haven't got things to do, so be outside of their work, that can be a challenge, right?
Yeah.
And then if they don't have social interactions, then that's a challenge, right? So a lot of the time you find that a lot of men have lived their lives outside of the home. It's been work and tennis and golf and everything else. And so they've not really been part of the core social family structure, right? And so when they come on pension, mother has now started having grandchildren. So she's off to London to take care of her grandchildren. She's off to America to take care of grandchildren. She's going to live with her in-laws and taking care of grandchildren. So then there's a bit of a fragmentation in that there. So that can sometimes be a struggle.
Right.
And then if you haven't taken up something that's interesting, i.e. gardening, or there's a farm that you're going to, or there's some photography you're doing. There's a hobby, you know, or you have some kind of, consulting thing that you're doing that's keeping your mind fresh, right? Or association stuff. That can also be, you can be a bit isolated, and so that would be my first, line of how have you lived in a way that prepares you for when you come on retirement. And I think that we don't often think about that enough.
Yeah.
And
we don't make that deliberate effort to put things in place to maintain the social relationships.
So we fall into it.
Yeah.
Right. And when we fall into it, and then even our lifestyles, right? So sometimes we are not healthy and we're not too well. And then that becomes a bit of a struggle to navigate.
So now is the time to start thinking about all those
What's
things.
my life going to be like when I turn 60, after 60?
And what am I putting in place now?
Yeah. So how am I interacting with my family for then?
Yeah.
Right? How is my work structured to take care of me financially for then? How is my profession structured for me to have something to do that keeps my mind stimulated? Because when I think about my dad was a surgeon and surgery was his life, right? So even after he couldn't operate anymore because he got carpal tunnel syndrome, and so essentially his hands, he began to struggle with his hands. He went into doing consulting, and he used to say, listen, I don't like it as much.
It's not the same.
It's not the same, right?
Yeah.
He had a whole bunch of hobbies, so they kept him afloat for a while. But just being isolated was hard on him, really hard on him, right?
Yeah.
And
The adjustment is difficult.
the adjustment was so hard, you know. And so I always say that it's important for us to, because he's been a busy man his entire life.
Yeah.
And suddenly he had gone from 10 to like a 3. You know, so he had some social interactions and all of that, but I don't think that we had planned it.
It's not the same. Yeah.
It's not the same. So, I mean, I would go and sit with him and chat and lie in his bed and all of that, right? Because I'm one person, you know, and he definitely needed far more.
Yeah, and that. And
Than
usually by
that.
pension age, your children also have their families and they're busy.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, obviously his family was there, but it's not enough, you know.
Yeah, yeah. There's also, I think there's a need for more social opportunities for older people.
Yes. And we don't have those structures here, right?
Yeah.
You know, it's not about a nursing home. It's about, are you able to go out for a day trip at a brie with
Yeah.
other people, you know, and have outdoor interactions and, you know, social interactions and all of that, right?
Yeah.
Okay. The next one would be still the same, but early empty nesters. So families, couples whose kids have just gone off to university. I think that there's a lot of experiencing of loneliness, especially for mothers
Yeah.
when the kids go off, right? Because you're still, a lot of the time, there's a lot of centering of our lives around our children.
Our purpose again, right?
Our purpose.
It's like, this is why I'm here.
This is why I'm here.
They need me. And
So-
then they fly out and
And they don't need us anymore.
they don't need you. And you're calling.
No, and the phone is ringing and she's looking at the finger and said, no, I don't
Oh,
need.
no,
and so
no,
she
no,
needs
no.
money, then she'll pick up the phone.
She'll call. Yeah,
What-
so that's another a very difficult time. Similar to the pensioners, it's the prepping for it. But it's also, I think it's a bit easier at that time. You still got your health and your energy. Usually before you have children, you're in that space where you know how to have fun. And then they change your life.
Right, yeah.
And then they leave. Look at it as an opportunity to live life to the full. It's change. Change is hard. It's always an adjustment. But again, if we embrace, I'm going to feel uncomfortable for a while. This is different. I'm not feeling like I'm needed. I haven't spoken to my bestie in how many months, but embracing that there's opportunity still at that time, it can help to stave the loneliness. It is easier for empty nesters to problem solve in some ways. Yeah.
In sickness, when you get some kind of terminal disease, even if it's not terminal or if you're chronically ill,
Yeah.
it can be lonely. You know, imagine you have a diagnosis and the prognosis might not be that great, even though you might be surrounded by people
Yeah.
who are well-intentioned, well-meaning, and supporting you in different ways. In the mind,
That's lonely.
you
And sometimes you don't even want people to know. So the situation, some of the situations I've dealt with is where you don't want to be pitied. You don't want people to start to see you
as weak.
as weak. So you'll find people are not open, even though it may have been helpful and therapeutic to share your condition. They would hide it because they don't want to be seen as weak, like you said.
Yeah.
And then that adds this extra layer of now people don't know, but you're struggling and they're wondering why.
And you're angry as well that no one's checking in on you. Like, because there's, and it's almost like the two negatives sitting in one space, right?
Yeah.
But, you know, Christine hasn't called me. She hasn't checked in on me. Why hasn't Christine checked in? But you haven't really told Christine what's going on, right? But then there's a cultural bit where what care was Sunny? We don't tell our stories, right? Because this one is something that was on, it's for the inner circle, right? So, but it's still lonely.
It's very lonely.
But the question is, the loneliness from not telling people is different from the loneliness of dealing with the ailment by yourself.
Yeah. And in a way, no one else can deal with it
with you,
right? Yeah, like they can support, and it may even be annoying, right? They can support, but they can't go through what you're going through. And sometimes it's that realization that you are alone in this experience because it is your body and it is your like future, and your final destination is you. You came into the world alone. It will end alone. That realization can impact so heavily and just leave a weight of loneliness. It's still better to have support. Sometimes there'll be other people who they haven't gone through what you're going through, but they may understand in different ways, right? They may be able to empathize in their own way. Sometimes it may be other people who have a chronic illness or had a loved one who had it that can also help you go through it. And so if you ask me, if you have the option of, I'm alone anyway, why should I even try and get support? Or I'm alone, but maybe it'll lessen the burden if I can share this and people can walk with me through it. That's the better option. Yeah.
I think that when it comes to going through something, illness, I've seen people that I love dearly go through various ailments, like having a significant surgery or, going through life-threatening diseases, right? And being worried that they are inconveniencing you, right? And so feeling that they should do it alone. And the question I ask often is, do you have to do it alone? Which is what you're also saying, that it's better not to have to do it alone.
And it takes strength to allow people to help. In some
It takes
way.
courage.
It takes courage. We assume like if you're independent, you're strong, but there's a certain kind of strength in acknowledging
your humanity and your weakness. And a certain kind of humility as well, right?
Yeah.
But I think that understanding that it's lonely and understanding that it's not easy for them, or for anyone who's going through that, right?
Yeah.
And being able to, and maybe once again, the question is, what do you need me to be for you comes to play in this kind of situation. And sometimes offering the things you can be for that person, right? Because sometimes people do not always know, or they feel like if they told you, you couldn't be that.
Or they don't want to be a burden.
Or they don't want to
but
be
if
a
you
burden.
offer,
But if you offer and said, well, I can afford to pay some of your bills, or I can offer to spend time with you, or I can offer, if someone was learning to walk again, I can offer to go to physiotherapy with you.
Or I can babysit.
Or I can babysit for you. I think that, I always say that anyone who offers me blanket help, I reject it in Jesus' name. And sorry that I say it so violent.
Speak your truth.
And because it's like, when you're getting married or when you lose someone, I'm here. If you need anything, let me know. I am not calling you. You understand, be specific with what you want to do to help me.
Yeah.
Because if I've lost a father or I've lost someone I love, what you do is you say, Ikuya, I can pick you up every day and take you here and do this
Then
with
they
you.
know you mean it.
And then they know you
You've
mean
thought
it.
about it.
And they've thought about the help that you can offer. Right? Because you know the things I need.
Yeah.
When I'm sick, I need to pay bills. I need someone to sit with me. I need someone to take me to physio. I'm just saying, I'm just throwing this out there, right?
Yeah.
There's specific things that people need. I need
Yeah.
water. I need, right? And sometimes it's good to understand, for you to think about what the people need and say, can I do this for you? Can I do A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H for you? And they'll say, oh no, actually, this is what I need. Because then they know that you actually want to do something.
Or they may even say, oh, it's okay. But later on, when they need it, they'll say, oh, well, it can't fit. So let me ask.
Yes.
Yeah.
Another one is the loneliness that comes from self-development and setting boundaries. When you decide that you are no longer going to be the party girl, or you're no longer going to be the one who is the guy chasing every girl in the skirt, and you're going to start focusing on your family, or you're no longer going to be the guy who is messing around, spending your money, and taking all the boys out, or you're no longer going to be the person who is slacking at work with everybody else. And you start to set the boundaries in place to achieve some of those goals.
There'll be pushback.
There's pushback from the pussy,
Yeah.
if you know what I mean.
Status quo has changed.
The status quo has changed. Why? Charlie,
We were benefiting
from your dysfunction. Now you want to be functional.
No. We don't like it.
We don't like it.
Yeah. It's
What are your thoughts?
Yeah, it is very lonely. And it takes a while, right, for the other people to get the memo. And so in the beginning, they'll assume it's a phase. Oh, she's not serious. You'll get comments like, hey, you've changed. Or, so these days, now, dear, you are too good for us.
Appetite.
Or what? Yeah. And so that strength and conviction of why you set those boundaries, you have to remind yourself of that all the time. It will come with loneliness.
Yeah.
But is the loneliness worth it? Is the question, right? So if the loneliness is worth that higher goal you set for yourself, embrace the loneliness, acknowledge it, give it protocol, welcome it.
Yeah.
Knowing that it's not a forever loneliness too. Or it may be, but it may not be. Because as you yourself adjust to your new status quo, it will start to feel like the new normal. It will start to feel better. Yeah. But in addition to setting your own, like being convicted in your own boundaries, you may also have to communicate with the people. Because maybe they don't know, right? Maybe there have been other people who have suddenly stopped partying, but they came back eventually. And they may even support you sometimes if you can explain to the few that you trust the whys of your setting boundaries.
Yeah.
Maybe even turn it on them, ask them for support. Right. This is difficult for me. I'd appreciate it if I know you've got my back. I'm trying to do this new thing. Yeah. They'll be shy to be teasing you after that. Yeah.
I find that often we are afraid of change because of the discomfort of how others will receive that change, not because we don't want the change ourselves.
Yeah.
A
lot of our experience is, what do others think of me? So often in therapy, we have this thing called a downward arrow, where you keep asking like, why? And eventually it comes to, I want people to like me.
Yeah.
And there's no other why. That's just the why of it. Yeah. And so, yes, peer pressure is real. Yeah. We're very much influenced by others.
Right. And so it's good that as we want to change and want to be different, we also we build the resilience within ourselves and the courage within ourselves to you know, pursue those things that are important to us.
Yeah.
The next one is only children. Can it be lonely for only children?
It can be, but there are solutions. Especially in a community-oriented society where there's cousins and there's, play dates and hangouts. But it can be lonely because at the end of it, you come home and it's just you. It's just you and your parents. Yeah.
So there's a need to be intentional to build community
for
around them and
Yeah.
engage them a bit more.
Right. Yeah. So let the cousins feel free to come over a lot. And it's good for them to learn to socialize.
And build social skills with
Social
others.
skills.
And not be selfish.
Not be selfish. Learn to share. So it can get lonely, yeah.
We've talked about teenagers already. So teenagers was here. Widows and widowers.
That's a heavy one. Yeah. Especially if you had a healthy, close relationship with that spouse that has now passed away. And you find over time when you're in a marriage that you kind of become one, not just in the biblical sense, but your identity is merged with theirs. And so widows and widowers have a very difficult time. But they can overcome it too. It takes time. So one person described it as, it's not that the grief becomes smaller. It doesn't. But it's that other things come to fill your life. So the grief is there, but now there's other people, other projects, other community service, things that you're doing that start to fill that hole.
Okay. All right. So, into my standard Bible verse.
Okay.
So do not fear, for I am with you. Do not be dismayed, for I am your God. I'll strengthen you and help you. I'll uphold you with my righteous right hand. And it's the thought that God is always with us. And I think that it's always important to feel a presence. And God realizes that there are times when we will feel alone and we'll feel his absence. And in this, he reassures us that he's always going to be present. And that's Isaiah 41:10. And another one is Matthew 28:20, where he says, and surely I'm with you always to the end, to the very end of age. And I think that once again, it's just the thought that he recognizes how important his presence is for us in our day-to-day existence. So, to my final question.
Can I just say one quick
Please
thing?
do.
As you were saying the memory verses, I thought of the Bible verses. I thought, you know how with Jesus, when he came on earth, he went through so many things, and sometimes it's comforting to know, like, oh, he understands.
Yeah.
And I thought of when he said, my God, why have you forsaken me? And that loneliness he must have felt in that moment of, like, even the
almost
Father,
like a separation,
a
from God.
separation.
Yeah.
So he truly understands what that loneliness feels like. And remembering that can be very comforting for when we're feeling lonely. Yeah.
Thank you for that.
Welcome.
Thank you for that. So, in service of understanding that we're not built to be alone as people. We are built to have continuous connections, no matter how minute. If there are three things that we need to do to build and sustain meaningful connections with people within our ecosystem, what would those three things be?
Okay. So the first one would be to initiate the connections. Don't let life take over the busy routine. Be very deliberate about don't wait for people to reach out. If there are friends that you appreciate and trust, find the time. Even if it's a Sunday brunch, Sunday after church, let's have a quick drink. Find the time to initiate the connections. To maintain, find those 2 or 3 people and maintain the interactions. Again, thinking when I'm finally not working or busy or the children have left the home, what would I love to do with my time? Let me do a little bit of that so that I'm just building from there. And then the third, communication has to come in somewhere. When we're lonely, communicating with our loved ones can fix a lot. But usually we're scared of being vulnerable. We're already feeling vulnerable because we're feeling lonely. So we don't want to put ourselves out there. But if we can find the courage to, in our own way, and I tell people, be creative. It can be a message on the pillow to your spouse because you don't know how to start the conversation. Yeah. It can be while you're watching a movie, you say, this reminds me of us or of this person. Find ways to communicate with the people in your life, how you're feeling, and the sadness, the loneliness, the vulnerability that you're feeling, with the hopes that it's the first step to then fixing that problem.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I really appreciate this conversation.
It was a good one.
Cocktails.
Or
mocktails. So, to the best part of this, cocktails. I made you a mocktail. Okay. So there's no booze in it because you're drinking and driving.
Yeah, unfortunately.
You need to tell me one thing that's in it.
Okay.
And then, so stir it up.
All right.
There
Cheers.
You go.
This is good. As to whether or not I have any idea.
Fine.
Okay, hold on.
Let's go.
This is called mindful sipping. There's something citrusy in it. It tastes like either like tangerine or the equivalent. Starts with an M. Am I on the right track?
Tangerine or the equivalent, yes.
Oh, yes. So check. I've gotten 1 point.
You've gotten 1. Today, you have just been so easy on me.
Is that... hold on. That's all I can taste. I can't taste anything else.
Stir it up. Thank you very much. It's been lovely having you.
Oh, it's been lovely being here.